What's going on, guys? Today I'll be installing a catch can on the Mustang. Alright guys, so I'm going to start off by saying I am in no means an expert on catch cans or crankcase ventilation. I know that crankcase ventilation is important, especially for a boosted car like this. So when this engine came from the factory, obviously there was no turbo, so there was no boost. And so the crankcase in two locations could be vented here and also here. So those were both vented to the intake. So this one I think was vented like right here to where the intake tube was. And then this one was vented to the throttle body somewhere. I think I capped that connection off. So those obviously could not be vented to the same spots anymore because that would then be throwing boosted air into the crankcase, which you definitely don't want. So for the time being, I just put these little filters on both sides. That's not really the best solution. It might work pretty well in some cases. Well, this side, I mean, seems to be fine. It's completely clean. So I think that is actually venting properly. This side is where I have the issue. You can't really tell except for the fact that these started as the same color, the same red, and see how this one is really dark. And I can actually visually see that oil is dripping down on the valve cover there. So that means that oil is actually getting like sprayed out through that filter. And when that happens, it completely clogs that filter. So when the filter is clogged, it prevents the actual air from venting from the crankcase. So it's basically like just having that capped off and then the crankcase is not getting vented properly. So in order to fix this issue, I'm going to be installing a catch can. So I'm gonna actually install the catch can for both sides. I'm gonna plumb both sides to it, even though this side seems to be working fine. It's just a better way of doing it so I can have the canister that will actually catch any oil that's getting vented up and it will not clog the filter. So here is what I'm gonna be installing today. So this is the catch can. This is definitely not super top of the line. This is just a pretty generic catch can. You can get them pretty cheap online. I did go through it and kind of check that everything looked okay. Some complaints on these is that there's burrs from the machining process still in the can, and you definitely don't want that because you don't want it to be getting into your engine somehow. But I opened this one up and it looks pretty good actually. I didn't see any signs of metal shavings or anything. So I'm pretty happy with this actually. This was only, I think like 30 or 40 bucks for this catch can. So the way this basically works is these are the ports that will vent to the crankcase. This has an in and an out on it. This would be like if you were going to put it in line from the crankcase that would still be going back to your intake and you didn't want oil to be getting into the intake, so this would catch it. But I'm gonna use both as an in basically because I'm just using it as something to catch the oil and then still vent it. So these ports get routed into the canister. You can see there's a little deflector here. There's this baffle. That's basically to keep the oil down in the canister and keep it from venting up and getting this filter all oil soaked like mine did. So I'm just gonna run the one that has the problem into the inside because that goes down and is not directly connected to the filter. The one that has the outside is actually kind of plumbed into where the filter is, and then it has this kind of bronze filter on the bottom so it doesn't pick up the oil that's in the canister. So it's pretty basic. This came with a couple different sized barb fittings here. I'm gonna be using 5/8 for everything. So those are the ones I screwed in here. These actually have O-rings, so they should seal okay. You shouldn't need pipe tape on these. Also, the canister does have this little valve, so this would be to empty the oil. And that really the main thing I'm gonna have to be figuring out is exactly where I'm gonna mount this. This has this little mount bracket and some sheet metal screws, probably to the strut tower somewhere. I'll just see kind of where everything lines up. So I also got some fittings here. So one side of the motor is already 5/8, and that's the line I want to run to the catch can. So that's where I'm going to use this. It's just a 90 degree so that it's not coming straight out of the valve cover. It can go at a 90 and then get over to the catch can. The other side is actually 3/8. So I'm going to be using this 3/8 elbow for the same reason, and then I'm going to be jumping it back up to a 5/8. From what I've read, it's kind of best to have a larger line than a smaller line just to make sure that it's venting properly. Also, the small side is the side that is having that oil issue. So I want to size it up to a 5/8 for the line and then 5/8 into the actual catch can. So now I'm going to reassemble everything and go see exactly where I can fit it on my car. So this is looking like the best spot, really actually the only spot, because there is so much crap in this engine bay now that there's a turbo and all this piping. So I think this will work. I'll be really close to this one. The other one will have to route around and get to this port. So now I'm going to mark and drill some holes for the mounting screws. So these are actually self-drilling screws, but I knew there was 2 pieces of sheet metal here. So trying to drill it with the actual screw probably would have been near impossible. So that's why I drilled that pilot hole first. I pulled the mounting bracket off of the actual catch can, a little easier to work with when trying to do this mounting. So that tightened up really nice. That's going to be super solid on there. So I'm going to be working on this passenger side vent first. And after looking at where I had to place the catch can, I think I'm going to actually route it in front of the engine and under the intake tube here. That will be the most direct route to get to the catch can instead of going the whole way back around and coming in that front port here. So this side is the smaller 3/8 connection. So I'm going to be using this 3/8 elbow, and then I'm going to be stepping up to the 5/8 like this, and then running across, and then 5/8 straight into the catch can. So now I'll throw this piece on the car so I can measure the final length that I'll need for the 5/8 that's going to go from this to the catch can. Okay, so I got the passenger side routed in here. So now I'm going to move on to the driver's side, and I realized I don't think I'll actually even need the elbow that I have. It's already 5/8, and just cut it to the right length here, and I should be able to slip it right on the catch can. All right guys, so here it is, final install. So that was actually really easy. After I did the research to make sure I had all of the correct line sizes and fittings that I needed. So here on the passenger side, I actually don't have any hose clamps on the barb fittings here because those fit extremely tight. So I'm pretty sure to even get those off, I'd probably have to even cut the hose. And this isn't really gonna be seeing any high pressures, so that should be fine. I did put a clamp on the actual connection that sits on the valve cover. And then over here for the driver's side, I did put clamps on everything. Those were a little bit looser connections. And at the actual catch can, these were a little looser fitting on these barbs, so I put clamps there. But I'm really happy with how this mounted up. This is extremely solid on here. I do have access to this valve under here. It'll probably be kind of difficult. I might like put a little cup under there to catch the oil and release the valve. But I really didn't have much option as to where else to put it in this engine bay. As you can see, it's extremely cluttered now with the turbo. Of course, some people that want their engine bays to be immaculate, they probably wouldn't want to run this line straight in front here. They'd also probably use AN lines and do it a much cleaner way. But you know, this is like basically a stock engine bay right now. I'm not too worried about the looks. I just want it to function properly. So this should resolve my issue of inadequate crankcase ventilation on the passenger side here. And now I should be able to catch that oil and empty it out as it's needed. So yeah, that's it for today. I know not too much of a crazy install today, but I do have something over here under that sheet. So there is some pretty exciting stuff coming for the Mustang. But for now, that's it. So I'll see you guys later.